Last weekend, Father Will and I began a homily series on the extraordinarily good news of the gospel. It's something that we should have heard many, many times already as disciples of Jesus, but we, as Christians, need to be reminded again and again of our own story, pondering it over and over again, because it's how we should see the entire world. And so, during these weeks, we're not specifically focusing on the exact readings that we have here, but this overall message of the gospel that all the scriptures are within. So, our story of salvation, we can break down into four main elements: created, captured, rescued, and our response. And last weekend, we considered the very first one, created, the wonder of how we have been created by a good God in his image and his likeness, male and female, he created us. We were created good, very good, created for relationship, both with God and with each other. It's amazing to ponder that very good news. Today we focus on the second of those elements of the gospel, captured. There's many people in our world today that, in response to our claim that there is a good God who created everything good, they may wonder, how could this be? Just look around us. Not everything's good. Where did all the bad come from? Why is there so much evil in our world? Why is everything so obviously messed up? For example, in our recent weeks, we can look to the tragedy like at Annunciation Church and School in Minneapolis. We can begin to wonder, how come God didn't even protect his own children in the very moments that they were praying to him? Sometimes we can forget just how bad the bad news is. But tragedies like that remind us that the bad news isn't just bad, it's horrific. We might look across our world and we see wars and conflicts in other places and, think that we're very far removed from those kinds of things. But the reality is that you and I, every single one of us, all human beings, we have been born into a war zone. That's our reality. We have an enemy who wishes our destruction. So Jesus, we call upon you and we ask you for the grace to understand our helplessness, that without you, we are lost in captivity to an enemy, to the power of sin and death. So we have an enemy. Who is he? Sometimes we might begin to think that God is our enemy, allowing so many things happen to us and our loved ones. But that's not it. God is not our enemy. Sometimes we might look around at other human beings, those who do absolutely awful things to one another, and we might think they are our enemies. But even there, we're not correct either. We do have an enemy. Evil doesn't come from God, but it does come from one of his creatures, an angel who was first called Lucifer, the light bearer. He had been created good by our good God. But after his rebellion against his creator, he now has new names that reveal to us something of what he does. We know him as the devil, the divider, or Satan, the accuser. So why did Lucifer, now the devil or Satan, why did he rebel against God? Well, it says in the scriptures, in the book of Wisdom, it says, by the envy of the devil, death entered the world, and those who are allied with him experience it. So envy is Satan's motive for his rebellion. Envy is the sadness that we might feel over the good fortune of someone else. that someone else's joy ends up causing us sorrow. This is a very awful kind of sin that we can experience, that of envy. Satan is envious of you, of us as human beings. That's who he's envious of. So envious that he ends up hating us. Because to think that creatures that are lower than him by nature would be made in God's image, he can't stand it. And even more so that these lower creatures than him would be invited to share in the very life of God himself. That's what we talked about last week. That's what we're destined for, to share in God's very nature. And more so that the angels, they were not just created to serve God, but also us as messengers and as protectors. And Satan cannot stand this. His motto is, I will not serve. I will not serve. And so Satan, he and other angels that he led to rebel and join him against God, they're the other fallen angels that we sometimes will refer to as the demons. They all rebelled, and they have now gone to war against us. Now, sometimes in our skeptical world today, they may say, why do you believe in the devil? He's not actually real. You don't actually think that he's a real thing, right? Well, if that's the case, then Jesus himself is a liar, because he very much spoke of the reality of Satan, and in fact was in conflict with him in the scriptures. This enemy, Satan, and the fallen angels, the demons, they're not symbols. They're not some kind of personification of the evil we see in our world today. They are a real, live, powerful enemy. And they are bent on our destruction. And while we human beings are responsible for the evil that we choose to commit, we can wonder, what some people get out of some of the things that they do. It doesn't seem to make sense. But it does begin to make sense if we realize behind all human sin is a much more insidious plan, that of these spiritual powers. St. Paul, he wrote that our struggle is not with flesh and blood, but with the principalities, the powers, the world rulers of this present darkness, the evil spirits. That's our enemy. So after Satan's rebellion, the devil set out to enslave those that he was supposed to have served, and to degrade those that had been destined for a life with God. And so the devil's strategy, his main strategy, is to try to convince us that God is not our loving Father, that instead God is our enemy, that we can't trust God, that we can be happy without our Father. This was what the devil did to our very first parents. We read in the scriptures, Satan against Adam and Eve. He says to them, did God really tell you not to eat from any of the trees in the garden? He's trying to get them to think that God's holding something back. God doesn't really love you. If he would, he'd give you this. He says to them, if you eat that from that tree, you certainly won't die. God knows well that the moment you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like gods, and you will know the difference between good and bad. You don't need God to be happy. You can just decide for yourselves what is good and bad. He's just trying to stop you from being fully who you can be, to be like him. Satan, his tactic is to try to destroy our relationship with God. And he's succeeded in that original sin. And he continues to succeed in our time today. He continues his tactics across all time. And it continues to happen now. So what more does he do? Satan, he's the accuser. And so he accuses. First, he accuses God. See all the bad things that happen in the world around us, see the bad things that have happened in your life. God's not going to answer your prayers. He's never answered your prayers. Why is he going to answer them now? He's not going to help you. God's not good. He's allowed all these bad things to happen. He doesn't care about you. In fact, maybe God doesn't even exist at all. He accuses God. Second, he accuses you and I. He accuses us. All these things that have happened, it's all your fault. You're not good enough. No one could love you. He accuses us. He accuses others that are around us. It's everybody else's fault. If they really loved you, they wouldn't have treated you that way. Maybe their words and actions are actually confirming just how unworthy of love you are. Maybe the things that they say and do, that actually is who you're supposed to be. He's accusing those around us as being the problem. He lies. He's the liar. You're worthless. If everybody knew the truth about you, they'd abandon you. You'll never live up to what God wants you to be. The devil, he's the divider. He tries to divide us. He seeks to destroy all of our relationships, especially that with God, but of course also with one another. He wants to stop us from having good friendships, to try to isolate us from one another and pit us, each other against one another. He's the tempter. He tempts us. We're tempted to fill our lives with all sorts of things that maybe at first seem to maybe that'll make me happy, but then when we get caught in them and we can't escape our sinful habits, we find that it's just led us to misery after misery. But now we're stuck. They're destructive. He gets us to freely choose to commit sins that further and further separate us from our loving Father. And finally, Satan discourages us. Give up. It's too hard. You're never going to be able to change. These are all of Satan's tactics that he uses, whether they're from things outside of us or internally, things going on within. So what is Satan's end goal in all of this? Well, his goal is our destruction. He wants us dead. And I'm not just talking about physical death, as bad as that can be. No, he wants our eternal death of our soul. And that's the consequence of original sin. That because of original sin, we are now born into the world separated from God. And we are in the hands of that enemy. We are captives. Imagine what it would be like to be abducted, to be enslaved, to be human trafficked. It continues to happen in our world today. Someone who's in that situation with no hope of gaining freedom. Well, that's the reality of our situation. That's what Satan has done to us. We're born under the dominion of hell itself. And there is no escape, not on our own. We are under the power of sin and death. Imagine again someone who's feeling the despair of being affected by horrendous evil. The despair of someone who's been kidnapped. They don't know what their captors are going to do to them. All they know is it's not going to be good. And there in their captivity, they're feeling all alone. Nobody knows where they are, and nobody is looking for them to save them. And then we'll begin to understand just a little bit more the hopelessness of our situation apart from God. And this is all pretty heavy stuff. It's very sobering. But unfortunately, this is true. This is reality. If we just think about it, it explains why, if we were created by God, we see all the things happen in our world around us. Even the unsatisfaction, the disquiet in our heart, and why we can't get away from some of those habits that we so desperately wish I didn't do. Why don't I do the good that I want to do, and I always do the bad that I don't want to do? Why everything is so messed up in our world today? It's because we've been captured. Our situation is grim. But we are not alone in the darkness of despair. It's the reason why this is part of the good news. The bad news is very bad, but it makes the good news even more extraordinary. We have a God who is good, and he will not let his creatures, the ones whom he loves, to remain in the captivity of sin and death. So what, if anything, has our good God done about all of this? Well, that's what we're going to talk about next week, as we consider what makes the gospel extraordinarily good news. That we captives have been rescued.